Hooked on Life. We're back. Bruce and Rachel. Today we're talking about food addiction and just addiction in general. But I think food addiction is something that a lot of people are really, oh man. I'll tell you why food addiction in a little bit. But our quote to start this one off is action takes courage. So Action Takes Courage by Brene Brown is the quote that I'm bringing today. So food addiction, I can tell you right now that I'm an addict. I'm an addict. My name's Rachel. I'm an addict. This is Bruce. He's an addict. And
if you're listening to this, you're an addict to something.
Yeah, I mean,
in all seriousness.
Yeah, I could talk about that for a second.
Well, yeah, like an addict, you were addicted to something in your life. You know what I mean? Like that list could go on.
It really could. I think
drugs, food, sexual addicts, electronics, exercise. Like the new show that just came out, Rocket Man, with freaking what's his name? Elton John. He goes into that thing and he goes over his whole addiction list. He's all, I'm a shopping addiction, cocaine, bulimic, or all that stuff. Like he goes through the whole thing.
I haven't seen that. I gotta see that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like even him. You know what I mean? Like everybody has an addiction to something. But it's how you use your addiction and what it is like that you're addicted to your advantage. You know?
Right. That is so true because a lot of the time people hear addiction and they be like, they can't. No way I have an addiction, immediately. But it doesn't necessarily have to be in a negative or used in a negative way. It's all about what Bruce said is like, how are you using whatever your addiction is in it to.
Yeah. A great example is Goggins, believe it or not.
Okay. Do it.
This is an interesting thing that somebody shared with me that I thought was really cool. Is what he went through his life, his abuse, all that stuff, is it seems like now his addiction is still the pain. Feel pain. And still go to that place and suffer. But he's turned it into, instead of being it like it was him as a kid and stuff, because he does it with his extreme things he does. Because obviously he didn't know anything different. So he's trying to figure out how could he still have that same kind of feeling, same kind of thing. So he'll just do crazy stuff. There's nobody who does more crazier stuff than him. But he's addicted to it, right? He's addicted to go to these 100 miles. But what has he done with that too? Is he's also inspired millions of people because of it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? He's taken his addiction of like suffering, literally figuring out every way he can suffer possible. That's his addiction. He loves the pain. He loves pain. Like that's what I would say. But he's taken that and made it into a positive note and turned it around to be great. So that just proves right there, addiction is all kinds of sorts of things.
Yeah, it is. It really is. For myself, I often talk about how my heroin addiction and my food addiction went hand in hand. So when I use them, I used them to make myself, like, basically to not just make myself feel better, but to cover up my pain. So when I wasn't in my heroin addiction, at the time I had no idea I was using food addiction in the same way, but I would immediately go into my food addiction. And so no matter what, all the time, I was using something to cover up the pain that was in my life. And I was so addicted to covering up that pain in any way that I could. Oftentimes, so food does a very similar thing. Really the same thing, with endorphins that drugs do. And so if you're really thinking about it, somebody who doesn't know if they're battling with food addiction, a lot of the time when I talk to them about this, it'll be kind of their aha moment of when they've been in a hard place in life, or they've been in a place where like there's all these emotions going on and they eat something because immediately it makes them feel better, right? So when you eat something, what it does inside of you is so similar to somebody who, is using alcohol or drugs in the same way and what it does to them in their brain. So if you're not knowing if you're using the food in that way, that is food addiction. That is food addiction. So it's the feeling that you're getting from eating the food and you're addicted to that feeling. Does that make sense? So, I know it. I know it sounds crazy. Like people are like, "Oh my God, you're comparing a heroin addiction and when you hear the word heroin, it's like so freaky, right?" But food addiction is killing people in a very similar way over a longer period of time. I know a lot of people that we work with, and how their food addiction has brought them into their life of being 400 pounds, 500 pounds, or even not, maybe it's not that extreme, but how they've used food in their life to cover up in the pain that they've been in their life.
Yeah, no doubt. Even like people that are on the other side of the spectrum of like people that like binge eat to throw up, all that stuff. What is that called? Bulimia or whatever?
Bulimic.
Yeah, I mean, that's another way because they're addicted to covering up that way, like staying skinny and then all of a sudden go eat.
Well, they're addicted to Heidi often talks about this. So addicted to you restrict yourself.
Yep.
Right. And then get so hungry at night and she often talks about how she's covering up and eating all that food. Yep. And then you feel guilty and then you throw it up. And, it's the addiction is the same thing. You're just using it in a different way in the control that you're having over it. So, I mean, addiction, again, talking about how you're using your addiction and really looking at what your addictions are in your life. How can you, okay, I'm already going to go into like an action item here as I talk about this, but thinking of writing down what are the addictions in your life that you can identify and what negative effects are they having in your life and identifying those. So you're going to identify what are the addictions and really thinking about it. Because some of you maybe your mind's turning right now, of what those may be. And then list out the negative effects that they're having in your life and then list out the positive effects that they're having in your life. If the negative effects that it's having in your life outweigh the positive effects that it has in your life, that is something that you need to work on in changing that addiction into something else. I remember seeing a counselor and she said, I was thinking I had no more addictions. And she said, "No, Rachel, you've turned your addictions into something else. Like you turned your addictions into something. Now you're addicted to working out."
You have to replace an addiction with, you can't just say, "I'm done." You have to replace your addiction with some kind of other addiction. You have to. Yeah. Like everybody out there has replaced something with something. I mean, I don't, it's funny you say this because now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I don't really know what I've replaced like the food addiction with. Mm-hmm. Maybe it is working out in a weird, mysterious way, but now just thinking about it. But I've obviously have replaced it with something. I used to be a gamer. When you're 400 pounds, come on. Everyone that's overweight, 400 pounds, you gamed. You know it. Sat in your basement, gamed. If you're single. And that was an addiction. And I'm trying to think like what maybe I've replaced it with. But yeah, you have to replace it with something.
Yeah. So you will have something else in your life that, first of all, you need to identify what the addiction is. You need to identify if it's a negative in your life, okay? If it's a negative in your life, then thinking about something else that you're going to replace that addiction with. And so right now, going back to that food addiction and thinking about that automatically, if you have a food addiction, I can guarantee the negatives are going to far outweigh the positives of that food addiction. And it doesn't mean even if you replace it, that it's not something that you're going to have to deal with anymore. I will say, okay, this last weekend, I went with some girlfriends. We went on a trip together. One of my friends, she said that another friend calls her the portion queen. I'm not the portion queen. She's the portion queen, okay? We're driving up. I brought all my own food. And she stopped at the gas station. At each gas station, she got different things. I have no judgment on that. That doesn't bother me. She bought a packet of donuts. She didn't eat them right away, which floored me on its own. Okay. Then we got to the hotel. She ate later on, she unwrapped it. She ate 3 of the donuts, 3 of the chocolate donuts. There was still 3 left. She left them sitting there on the table. You guys, I thought about those chocolate donuts. I cannot tell you how many times. I could not believe that she could leave them sitting there. I would have eaten them until they were gone. Okay. And I would have eaten them either all the way, or I would have nibbled at them until they were gone. I know people that would eat 3 in front of everybody, then go in the closet and eat the rest of the 3 so that nobody else saw them. But I could not get my mind off it. So my point is that it's not that it's never going to go away. It's that you are going to find other ways to deal with it. Okay. So I have done enough work on myself to be at a place where, yes, I thought about it, but it's not something where I fell back into the addiction, if that makes any sense.
Yep. No, it makes perfect sense. Well, now that I've been thinking about it, I have replaced my addiction with other things. Because I used to be addicted to soda.
Yeah.
Drinking 300 ounces. So what was a way that worked for me, and it might not work for a lot of people, is I drink a lot of diet soda.
Yeah.
Like, so then my experience of still going to the gas station, all that stuff wasn't ruined. So I made it so like that still could cope. I'll eat a whole pack of gum in like a couple hours to just get something in my mouth. You know what I mean? Like that kind of things to replace it. And that's for me. Like people will say like, oh, that's too much diet soda. Well, I lost over 200 pounds doing it that way. So like, that's fine. You know what I mean? Because I was going to die the other way as it is. So I replaced it with things and just like, I literally battle like, okay, you know, this is here. I'm going to be going to the airport soon. And I think my addiction to the airport of eating junk food, like the moment I get in the terminal, it's like instantly like, well, it must be time for free for all, you know, and it's like you're instantly fighting every urge to not be like, I could justify this popcorn or justify this Quest bar. Like the addiction just starts coming, and
but you found things to ways to overcome it.
Yes,
it's like you were talking about,
and the mindset of knowing your why, believing in yourself, all those things,
keeping your integrity,
choosing your heart, getting uncomfortable because getting uncomfortable is denying it. Believe it or not. It's getting, because you're uncomfortable at that time. Like, were you uncomfortable looking at those chocolate donuts? And no one really knew. But you were uncomfortable the whole time. You were like, those donuts. Like, you're uncomfortable the whole time, just like sitting there thinking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, and so all those things play into place. And that's what to me is so like awesome about life, is because we play these freaking mind games in our heads. And that's what life's all about. Because it's like, yeah. And then you celebrate those victories. Nobody you're celebrating with except for you, because you know you freaking did it.
Yeah.
But that's what boils back down to what we talked about. Integrity, all those things, and loving yourself and overcoming a food addiction.
Right. Yeah, totally. So just to wrap it up, you guys, because a lot of you are like, you still haven't told me how to overcome my food addiction. And I feel that. Is that I want you to, one, identify whatever the addiction is. Right?
Yep.
You're going to write down the negative, what negative effects it has on your life. Then you're going to write down the positive effects. The negative effects outweigh the positive effects. Then you're going to work on how can you overcome this. So what you need to do is, what does that addiction bring to your life? And whatever it does for you mentally, emotionally, and physically, you need, and emotionally, you need to find something else that is going to fulfill that same feeling. So I now get that same feeling that eating that food brought to me. I now get that from exercise. So I found something else. So that is how you're going to overcome it. You need to find something that fulfills whatever that addiction was fulfilling. You need to find something else that has much more positive, that outweighs the negative, to replace that addiction with. Sound good?
Yep. I have one more.
Okay.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Another thing that somebody actually shared with me is actually one of the people we coach with. They learned it from somebody, so I can't take credit. It was actually an alcoholic addiction. Mm-hmm. Someone had an alcoholic addiction, and what they did is they made a list of 10 things of when the trigger came that they needed alcohol, and they literally carry the list with them, whether it's on their phone or whatever, and they pull it up and they go write down their list of an action item that they can do like right then and there that's going to benefit them and not turn to alcohol. So it's not even like, because what's so nice about that is it like completely switches your mind to finding something to replace it, and you're not thinking about it. So even if it's in your phone, like on a notepad, would be like, it's just on you all the time.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That was perfect. All right. Thanks, guys.
We're out.